Okay, we're going a little bit more high-tech today. And I was looking in the last talk on Iyengar's work, Light on Yoga. So I briefly talked about, on page 5, Pramana, standard or ideal. Don't confuse that with Paranama. This is Pramana. Paranama means transformation. Pramana means standard or ideal. And these are the 5 classes of Chitta that Patanjali refers to: Vipariyaya, Vikalpa, Nidra, Smriti. So, just in a brief recap, Pramana is the standard or ideal. Vipariyaya is a mistaken view, which is observed to be such after study. Vikalpa is like imagination, Nidra, sleep, Smriti, memory. So the fluctuations of the mind, the Vritta. I don't really like the way Iyengar is explaining this. I'd prefer it explained in more of a kind of psychiatric, neurological kind of framework. And I'm not sure if he's doing justice to Patanjali, or Patanjali is not giving a clear enough view of what consciousness is, which is the Chitta. So the Chitta Vritti. So those Chitta Vrittis don't necessarily cause pain. It depends on how they're used. What causes pain, which is Klesas, are when the Chitta Vritti is affected by avidya, ignorance, ashmita, egotism, selfishness, raga, jealousy, possessiveness, devesa, aversion. Hinavesha is like a clinging to life, or to it's like a grasping for worldly pleasure, if you like. So these are generally considered the 5 causes of pain by causing these samskaras, these kind of fluctuation vrittis on the mind, the chitta, that creates a kind of karmic impressions that then go into the body, cause illness, deformation to the body, damage to the posture, etc. As long as they're controlled and eradicated, then you can forget the past and live in the eternal present. Otherwise, you're a prisoner to your desires, and there's no peace. So those are the emotions that arise due to the 5 attributes of consciousness. So these are the 5 negative emotions, the Klesas, that will keep you locked into the material world in a painful way. So clearly you use Pramana as the ideal standard to discriminate. These are like the discrimination tools that the thought processes go through and try and determine how they're going to respond from the sense information and the memories which interpret that sense information. So you ideally use the Pramana to distinguish what is truth, what is a lie, what the correct behavior is to solve this problem in a way that's going to create harmony and is done in a proper righteous way that makes others respect you. Vipariyaya, which is a mistaken view. So then there's the correct view, or at least the ideal view, and then there's the view that you've observed later to be incorrect. So the kalpa, which is just a kind of a view or a decision made with just on maybe belief or without any kind of factual basis to it. Nidra, which is the absence of any decision analysis faculty going on. And finally, the smriti, which is the process of thinking based on memories. And all those categories or attributes of the fluctuations of consciousness, or the faculty of decision making when you deal with the senses coming in and how you respond to them, that can give rise to these, depending on how you use those decision making faculties, can give rise to these klesas, which cause these emotional results, such as ignorance, selfishness, jealousy, aversion, and the abhinavesha, the love of sensual enjoyment. So how does this impact the yogi on their path? On page 6, Iyengar goes on to talk about the distractions and obstacles which hinder the aspirant's practice of yoga. And he lists 9 of these distractions. And the first one is vyati, sickness which disturbs the physical equilibrium. So these are kind of the results of responding to your decisions in a negative way by reacting based on your uncontrolled emotions, the klesas. And if you do repeatedly behave in this kind of abusive way, then this will be the kind of result of that behavior, of those kind of responses, those emotive responses. So the first, result, I would say, but Iyengar describes them as distractions and obstacles, is vyati, which is sickness, which disturbs your physical equilibrium. You get sick. So you behave in a negative way, like, for instance, get very drunk a lot. And the result was you get sick, and there can be long-term health consequences if you do it for years. So that would be an example of, just say, a combination of these things. Like, certainly you probably haven't followed Pramana because you haven't followed the ideal advice in dealing with alcohol. And you've then no doubt fallen for, which is, you haven't recognized your mistake. In other words, you believed your friends that say, oh, you'll feel so great if you get drunk. You'll have such good a time at the party. So we could describe that as a mistaken view, which is observed to be such after study, after watching all your drunken friends and see how they end up the next day with their hangovers. Then you can logically deduct that their assertion about the great time was pretty temporary and seemed to have some long-term bad consequences. So that would be an example of viparyaya, a mistaken view, but that is not learnt as a mistake. And finally, so this is a view that rests merely on a whim or a fancy or imagination, without having any factual basis to it. So, I mean, in the example I've given, well, there is some factual basis. For a temporary time, you might feel very good when you're drunk. So what they're saying is not entirely untrue or without any factual basis. So Vikalpa doesn't necessarily apply to this example, but you might say that there's a certain amount of fantasy there, that this process of getting drunk will bring you long-term happiness. So in this sense, if you've got that delusion in your mind that this is going to be how you will meet your partner at some discotheque, where you've got extremely loud music and a lot of alcohol and other drugs, and you believe booming around, jigging up and down randomly. Well, I wouldn't call it dancing. Dancing, has a structure. This is kind of thumping around the stage in totally doing your own thing without any coordination with others, or maybe it randomly occurs. Sometimes it does in those places. I mean, I'm only human as well. I was young as well, and I did frequent those places as well, believing all that nonsense. And I'm pretty sure throughout the history of humanity, even maybe the caveman, they had, hey, maybe don't head off, getting drunk on the ale, the fruited fruit, with all the drums and banging away with all those young people in their seductive little fur coats. I'm sure fathers were saying it back then, 50,000 years ago. Human beings really slow learners, I mean, I don't want to make people feel miserable. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to say, maybe there's a better way. I mean, it's kind of true. You're only young once, and maybe you need to go out, sow your wild oats, as they say. But the shorter you can minimize that time of unbelievable stupidity and harm to yourself, the better. But don't be miserable in life. Don't. If you have to do a little bit of that, do it. Get it out of your system. But do it in a way that you have full awareness of what you're doing. So you don't just keep on repeating the same pain until you do serious damage to yourself. And I speak from experience because I did serious damage to myself. I was addicted to marijuana. I was, I had raves still at the age of like 32. And some of you are probably nodding your head saying, yeah, I'm the same. I mean, with me, I didn't even get addicted to marijuana until I was like 27, 28. I was pretty straight-laced, a lawyer, tax consultant, worked all the time. I did have nice holidays, but but I towed the line, and then finally, partly through marijuana and through a job I hated in London in KPMG in corporate tax, I reached a stage where I kind of thought there has to be more than life than just coming in the dark and working all the time in an office in front of a computer, and then in the dark leaving, and then coming home and having to study for exams or do extra work. So that to me was not the purpose of life. It didn't take me long to work that out. I was less than 3 years in that corporate life, working in corporations, to realize this is not what I want. So, but then I did a lot of stupid things after that. From 27 till 32. I did a lot of very good things. I went and spent a couple of years in India, and I did a lot of traveling all around the world. But it was mixed up with a lot of self-destructive things as well, which I was in the process of finding the yoga path. When I quit my job, I was only just beginning to look at yoga as maybe a possibility. Had I had a firm understanding of yoga, then I could have avoided a lot of harm, which had long-term consequences. So for my own health and my mental health. So I mean, I'm not, trying to be a kind of suppressive, repressive, kind of tyrannical, kind of religious figure who would, as you got in most of the religions, including Christianity and Hinduism and all this kind of Puritanism. In fact, I followed Osho, Bhagwan Rajneesh, who was always very much sort of like experienced life to the full. And I think, you have to balance things. You have to find that fine line between what you're prepared to experience in the world that can harm you, and what can give you joy, and what you can learn from, and what's going to destroy you. And it's often a very subtle choice. But the more you intellectually look at it, and the more you analyze your decisions carefully, then you can generally make the right decision to more quickly come out of the hell and see, what these people said for thousands of years as to how to live it does appear to be a better way than rolling around in the gutter throwing up. So Vikalpa, I think a lot of people, they do take these intoxicants because the intoxicants give them this kind of fantasy world, this imagination world. I never took ecstasy, but that, you know, gives you this feeling of elated high, of loving everyone and everything, which is very much the state of the yogi. But then it wears off. And because you don't know how to control it properly, you do a lot of stupid things when you're elevated to that state and you don't have the ability to create it in yourself. So that is in a way a kind of a kalpa. Thank you for watching this video on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Chitta Vritti, the causes for the modifications of the mind. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and comment, and I look forward to seeing you next time.